anything that crosses the blood-brain barrier, could pose danger and risk, because you can't control the level of whatever it is going into your brain. Like, it just goes through. And on an epidemiological level, that listening to Dr. Nevin, the drug passes through the brain and accumulates. There's no way for it to escape, and it goes into that, I'm not sure the exact code, or maybe that liver or kidney function test that you can do where YPY something or other.
Okay. Yeah.
Apparently, if you have lower counts of this certain enzyme, that you can be more prone to your body not being able to process the drug in the brain like other people can, and that's where the injury can occur.
Yeah. The response is it's not definitive. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things, like the guys who had psychotic breaks in theater or closely to actual point of theater from Somalia, very large percentage had native blood, right? Myself included, Dave Bona. So that could play an effect. The treatment of, going back to diarrhea, when we were treating for diarrhea, we believed it was Shigella. It probably wasn't. It was probably the Mefloquine. So we were adding stuff like Cipro on top of it, which is a big no-no for Mefloquine interactions. Like, then on top of it, we're also using, one of the tricks we would do if you had a cough, in order to suppress the cough, we might do a combination of a Tylenol 1 and a Ventolin, right? Because you can stop the cough, go out on patrol, right? So, it's not uncommon to use something like Benadryl along with a Tylenol 1 or a Ventolin inhaler. What's the effects of that with the Mefloquine? We don't know either. There's just so many things that could take place as a variable that would cause one person to react more than another, or sooner than later. The fact that we don't know what the half-life is once it crosses the blood-brain barrier is another big problem. So we know there's a half-life roughly of 14 days in the bloodstream, but it takes 6 weeks to build up to effective levels, in the bloodstream as well. What's the half-life without going into our brains right now as we're alive and measuring it? What's that half-life? What's the end result? What is the neural pathway damage permanent? Can it be repaired? If we remove the drug or filter the drug somehow, could we regain some of these skills that we've lost? So many questions,
Yeah, I know there's been some research showing that cannabis can help to grow new neural pathways in the brain, and I don't know if that has happened to me or whatnot, but I know that since taking that drug and eating healthier, that my brain has been able to heal in a way where I'm coping better. I don't know if any of the damage has been repaired or not. I'm working with my medical team to try and reduce inflammation in my body and brain as best as possible, because experience a brain injury, your brain's inflamed already. Certain foods and things can actually make the situation worse and create more inflammation, and it becomes a scientific experiment in the body to figure out how to level yourself back down,
So I'm glad you use that term, inflammation in the body and in the brain, because that's exactly, I'm seeing an internal medicine specialist who treats without drugs, because if I take a drug, my body becomes more inflamed, even if it's an anti-inflammatory,
Right.
Yeah, and it is a raging fire of inflammation going on in our bodies and our brains. And I believe that the real key to being able to function is to get that inflammation under control. So, boy, am I glad you brought that word to the surface.
Yeah, that's and everyone has their own theories of what's working best and whatnot. So as science progresses, hopefully we'll get a better answer of what we can do to reduce more inflammation for the brain and acquired brain injury, I guess, would be what we actually have on paper, right? So I've been looking into the treatments and whatnot for acquired brain injury, trying to learn. There's not much though between anything different that we're already doing, but
So I look at stroke victims.
okay.
All right, and you can also look at concussion victims as well. So how do you feed the brain to recover? You know, the brain eats fats, and it needs an abundance of them. It has to be balanced, so you're just plugging the arteries and the fat's not getting to the brain. So you really have to make sure your cholesterol is balanced. If you're on a cholesterol lowering drug, don't take it, because you need to get the cholesterol to the brain. Instead, change your diet so that you're getting good cholesterol instead of bad. But the other interesting thing is that insulin affects absorption of some fats in the brain as well, which is, you start looking at Alzheimer's in this particular instance. So medium chain triglycerides like coconut oil can be absorbed by the brain without insulin, which is why
I use coconut all the time. Coconut oil, I mean, for
Yeah.
cooking, we're putting it, you know, in even the smoothie and whatnot.
Yeah, and your omega-3, 6, and 9s, you know, super good. Your fish oils, going back to your diet. The real key is Alzheimer's, if I can pronounce it correctly, is now considered the diabetes of the brain. You know what I mean? It means the inflammation is keeping your brain from being able to absorb and get the fats, which is why the medium chain triglycerides are effective in combating Alzheimer's. So if you treat your brain kind of along the same lines, right, between of a stroke Alzheimer's victim, right, then your mental acuity and your emotional control go up, and that's what I've been finding, anyways.